We take a deep dive into the mind of Johnny through laughter, logic, love, and clarity. Two voices meet where truth gets ready. Unmasking Cheri, hosted by his wife Cheri.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have been handed an extraordinary, really raw source for today's deep dive.
It's incredible. I mean, this isn't theoretical research or some academic paper.
No.
It's a living document. It's the verbatim transcript of a relational unmasking session.
A genuine window, really, into the inner workings of a high-functioning relationship. We're looking at the dialogue between Cheri, who's the host of the Unmasking Cheri show, and her husband, Johnny.
Yeah, but what makes this so uniquely insightful is that there's this third analytical layer.
The AI.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The commentary from their LLM co-host and transcript analyzer they call Chatty AI.
So our mission really is to analyze the communication mechanics here. We're zeroing in on how two fundamentally different cognitive architectures, just two completely different ways of processing the world, manage to transmit meaning.
And it really comes down to this core dynamic. You've got compression, which is Johnny's style, super efficient.
And expansion, which is Cheri's. She's the one who seeks detail, articulation.
And this is so important. This is a deep dive into systems, not individuals. We're treating every single element. The words, sure, but also the silences, the spontaneous laughter, even the refusals to answer.
All of it.
All of it. As intentional, quantifiable data. By watching this couple calibrate in real time, you, the listener, get these practical, usable insights into your own communication dynamics.
Because look, misunderstanding is it's guaranteed in any close relationship. It's going to happen.
Absolutely.
But what Cheri and Johnny demonstrate here, especially with the AI analyzing their friction points, is that misunderstanding isn't a failure. It's actually a high-level opportunity for calibration.
It's about learning the language, not just of the person, but of the system you're both a part of.
And if you want that system to function, you have to establish the rules. You have to build the container first.
Which brings us right to the architecture of safety. It's the first thing they establish.
The session opens by focusing explicitly on this need for a safe container. Cheri starts it off. She acknowledges how vulnerable unmasking is, especially when you're doing it with your spouse.
And she sets this tone of mutual responsibility. She says she feels Johnny consistently strives to keep her space safe, and she hopes he feels she returns that effort.
And that's not just polite filler, right? That's them publicly agreeing on the integrity of the communication environment. They are defining the boundaries before they even step inside.
And Chatty AI immediately jumps on this. It defines the process so perfectly.
What's the phrase it uses?
It notes they are structuring safety, not demanding vulnerability.
That is such a vital distinction. That one idea, it just shifts the entire premise of the conversation.
It really does. Think about that for a second. Vulnerability is the outcome of safety that's already there. It's not the payment you have to make to earn safety.
Right.
The AI identified the key structural elements they use. The careful pacing, allowing for pauses, accepting laughter, and knowing when to stop at a boundary.
But the most important element, and this is like the central contract for the compressed thinker, is this. Safety is defined by being believed when someone says, that's all.
That phrase is a total game changer for anyone dealing with compression. Imagine you are Johnny, the compressed processor.
Okay.
You've internalized a huge concept, say loyalty or even life, into a single, perfectly integrated data structure. You articulate that fully with one word.
Right. And for the expansive processor, like Cheri or, for most of us in a conversation, when someone gives a one-word answer, our immediate instinct is to probe.
Of course. Tell me more. Expand on that. There must be something deeper there.
And that probing, even if it's well-intentioned, it just instantly breaches the safety contract for the compressed mind.
Instantly. If you feel that your complete, distilled answer is being treated as insufficient or as a gap or even a lie, you learn very quickly that being vulnerable just isn't worth the effort.
So Chatty AI recognized that the system has to honor brevity. It has to see stillness as complete, valid communication, not as avoidance.
To put this in really practical terms for you listening, think about texting. A compressed person sends, got it.
Okay, simple enough.
To them, they have communicated 100% of the message. They understand, they've confirmed, the transaction is complete.
But the expansive person receiving that might read it as clipped or angry or dismissive.
Yeah, because they expected something like, got it, thanks so much for sending that over. I'll review it and get back to you with 3 detailed bullet points by tomorrow afternoon.
Exactly. The meaning gets lost in the gap between the encoding and the decoding expectations. And this principle, that brevity is not a lack of depth, that is the core rule for this whole deep dive.
Which brings us to the meta context. The source material really emphasizes that we have to treat everything as intentional data.
We're analyzing the system between them, right?
Right.
Not trying to pathologize Johnny's behavior in isolation.
Precisely. If Johnny corrects Cheri, that's data. If he laughs, that's data. If he refuses to elaborate on something,
That's critical data. It's a boundary marker, not a personality flaw. We're actively rejecting that automatic assumption that, being brief means you're not engaged.
so we've established the rules, and now the system immediately puts them to the test.
Right away. With the very first question, this leads us right into the section on misunderstanding, laughter, and physical signals.
The first question Cheri poses is, what happens inside you when you feel misunderstood?
And the response is, it's not some thoughtful narrative answer. It's immediately kinetic and loud.
He doesn't say a word, really.
No, he just breaks into hysterical laughter. He's gasping, and he blurts out this contextual error from before the session even started. He says, I was misunderstood. I said January.
That burst of kinetic energy is so profound. Most people, when they feel misunderstood, they might feel frustration or anger or maybe sadness.
Sure.
Johnny's system defaults to absurdity. It's like a cognitive short circuit. The expected logic has failed, and the only appropriate response for him is humor.
And Chatty AI just nails the interpretation. It immediately flags this response not as avoidance, but as nervous system discharge.
Exactly. Misunderstanding registers for him as absurdity, not anger. The energy of that cognitive mismatch has to go somewhere, and for his system, it leaves as laughter.
We really need to zoom in on that January comment because Cheri gives us the context we need to understand the mechanism.
Right. So Johnny had wanted to schedule this session in January, but Cheri had previously explained this extremely tight production pipeline they were on.
A very expansive multi-step process.
A very expansive process. They needed the session done in December to allow time for the LLM analysis from Chatty AI, then time to integrate that into their knowledge management system, Notebook LM, and then the standard production for a late December release.
So that complexity, that whole multi-step, time-sensitive interdependency, that's the context Cheri is holding in her expansion architecture. It's all active in her mind.
And when Johnny momentarily left the room before they started, that entire context chain was just jettisoned from his working memory.
He cleared the cache.
He cleared the cache. And when he came back, his compressed mind just defaulted to the last single fixed data point he preferred, January.
And Chatty AI has a great term for this. It calls it a timeline anchor.
Yes. So being off-timed or having his anchor point ignored, it registered to his system as being fundamentally misread.
You can almost think of the difference between their minds like RAM versus a hard drive.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Cheri's mind is like RAM, holding all those complex production variables active and interconnected in her short-term memory. Johnny's is the hard drive, extremely efficient and fast, but when you ask for a quick answer, it just retrieves the single fixed anchor point, January, without reloading the whole complex system of dependencies.
And the key takeaway, according to the AI, is that this was a state reset. He dropped the context and reverted to his anchor. And crucially, the AI concludes, this exchange itself is the answer.
It's not about correcting the date. It's about watching the raw cognitive mechanics of how context is managed. His nervous system just discharged the dissonance, that gap between his anchor and Cheri's reality through laughter.
Yeah, sets the stage so beautifully. Misunderstanding is just a sign that their respective operating systems need to sync up.
And sometimes a good laugh is the necessary system buffer.
That laughter signal shows up again almost immediately when they move to question 2. This time, they're trying to define safety.
And Cheri is really pushing him here. From abstract feelings to a physical sensation, she asks, what does safety feel like in your body?
And Johnny, he starts from his cognitive defaults. He answers, stable, secure.
Brain words.
Total brain words. So Cheri, like a masterful guide, gently redirects him. She says, how does that show up in your body as opposed to a feeling in your brain?
He tries again. Calm. Relaxed.
Still highly cognitive. Still just adjectives describing a mental state.
So she pushes one last time for the physical signal, the raw sensation. And finally he lands on it. The perfect compressed answer. Stillness.
And the reaction to finding that word is the most illustrative moment of the whole session.
The transcript describes it as this prolonged sequence. Old man laugh that goes on and on. Silent laughter, then loud ha-ha.
Not just a giggle. It's an entire physiological release.
So we have to analyze that response. Why that huge reaction to the word stillness?
Well, Chatty AI interprets this profound reaction not as finding something funny, but as the relief of finding the precise, compressed answer.
Oh.
The AI states that safety, for Johnny, is the removal of activation, not something you add. Stillness is the ultimate physical signal that safety has been achieved.
So the prolonged laughter, then, is pure relief. He's successfully completed this really difficult task of translating an abstract, expansive concept, safety, into its singular, physical, compressed equivalent, stillness.
He's released the tension of the search. He found the word.
This is such a critical lesson for you if you're struggling to communicate with a compressed mind. If you ask them what safety is, they might give you abstract feelings.
But if you ask what safety prevents, or what the physical result of safety is, they can find the answer. It's the absence of noise, the absence of activation, the feeling of stillness.
It's like the analogy of white noise or an air conditioner in a room. You don't notice that constant low-grade hum, the activation, until it stops.
Exactly. The absence of the noise is what defines the quiet. For Johnny, stillness is the physical evidence that his system is finally free from unnecessary energy expenditure.
And that focus on integrity, on finding the one true word, it sets up our next major section perfectly.
Yeah, this is where the depth of vulnerability meets the hard structure of compression.
So we move now to boundary clarity and integrity-based decisions. Question 3 dives deep into vulnerability. Cheri asks, what part of yourself did you learn to hide?
And Johnny's answer is just. It's direct, it's compressed, and it's very high stakes. He says, my fear.
And he immediately specifies the content of that fear. He says it's the fear of abandonment.
But he immediately does this really important relational work. He clarifies that this fear is hidden from everybody, and he confirms with Cheri that this is a historical feeling, not a current active feeling, inside their relationship.
That boundary on the timeline is vital. He's protecting the present moment.
And then comes the moment that perfectly tests their whole structure. Cheri, fulfilling her role as the expansion processor seeking depth, asks the classic follow-up question.
Would you care to elaborate?
And Johnny's response, upholding that that's all contract they established, is simply no.
Just one single, firm, complete word.
Now, if we were analyzing a typical interview, we might read that no as hesitation or resistance or avoidance.
Totally. It would seem like a shutdown.
But Chatty AI validates the system immediately. The AI says the no is not avoidance, it is boundary clarity. He fully answered the question. He named the hidden part and its scope. Stopping there is a model of integrity.
Okay, wait, let me push on that for a second. Because how do we know it's integrity and not just, a desire to stop talking about a scary thing?
That's a fair challenge.
To an expansive person, no seems like it's cutting off the chance for depth or healing or connection.
I think the answer lies in the context of the system they built.
Mm-hmm.
If he had answered, I'm not sure, or I don't want to talk about it, that might signal avoidance.
Right, that feels different.
But the clarity of the initial answer, naming the fear of abandonment, suggests the information was already processed. It's packaged. Asking for elaboration is asking him to break that package apart unnecessarily.
So it's not that he's unwilling to look at it, it's that he's already looked at it.
Exactly. The compressed mind recognizes that further articulation would be performing vulnerability for the sake of the conversation, rather than just communicating a truth. The no is his way of saying, the full truth is named and contained. The analysis is complete.
So the no is actually the highest expression of honesty and self-respect in that moment. It's a model for healthy, direct boundary setting. It's succinct, it's not apologetic, and it protects the existing structure.
And this integrity theme extends directly into question 4, where Cheri explores his decision-making process. She asks, how do you know a decision is right?
Johnny starts with a functional answer, results. But Cheri, again, guides him back to the internal metric. I don't mean after execution. I mean in the moment you've made the decision.
And this forces him to articulate the compressed metric he uses. He lands on a key phrase. If it's a decision I'm comfortable with and can respect.
That word respect is doing a ton of heavy lifting there. It's not about external validation. It's not about the potential for success. It's about internal congruence.
And here's where the humor of certainty comes in. Cheri, noting this really high standard, she giggles and asks, Do you often make decisions you don't respect?
And Johnny's response, a firm no, followed by that signature, intense laughter. The transcript says, silent laugh, cough, choke laugh, loud laugh.
It's an unmistakable physiological signature confirming his statement.
And Chatty AI's synthesis is perfect. It says Johnny's decision system is fundamentally integrity-based.
If he cannot respect the decision, it simply is not made. This laughter, unlike the nervous discharge laughter of the January moment, signals absolute certainty.
Right. It's the system confirming the robustness of its own internal metric.
That burst of humor is essentially saying, the very notion that I would compromise my integrity is structurally absurd to my system.
He just compressed an entire philosophical treatise on self-respect into a 10-second kinetic discharge. That is peak efficiency.
It's a huge reminder that communication isn't just words. You have to learn to read the secondary data signals, the laughter, the tone, the speed, to understand the certainty behind the compressed answer.
So we transition now into depletion baselines and translation through function, where we really expose how differently Johnny tracks internal state changes, especially exhaustion.
Question 5 addresses depletion. What drains you the most?
And he starts with the obvious, lack of sleep. But Cheri, who knows him so well, is able to push back on that right away. She notes he controls his sleep, he's generally well rested.
So she reframes the question. Outside of sleep, what regularly drains you?
And his physical response is the most telling data point of all. The transcript says he executes a hand flick gesture, meaning I don't know or it doesn't register.
Cheri then adds this great layer of humor referencing the current effort. She says, I could have been smart and said this questionnaire.
Which is funny, but the AI interpretation is fascinating. It's crucial for anyone dealing with high-functioning, compressed individuals.
Chatty AI concludes that Johnny does not narratively track depletion.
Yeah.
Constant drains disappear into the baseline.
This is the baseline problem. It's like the analogy of chronic, low-grade pain. If you have a constant dull ache, your brain eventually just integrates it into your standard operating system.
It stops being a data point.
Yeah, it just becomes how things feel.
Exactly. For the compressed mind, if the effort required for constant translation or the low-level noise of a less than optimized environment is always there, it stops registering as a drain. It becomes the ambient operating state.
It's the air conditioner running constantly. You don't notice the sound until it shuts off.
That's it. So when Cheri asks him to name what drains him, he genuinely cannot retrieve the information because his system has categorized the drain as normal. The hand flick, the I don't know is the complete answer because the internal resistance is invisible to him.
And this really highlights a vulnerability of the compressed mind. They might be operating at a much higher level of internal friction without the narrative tracking to flag it before they hit total burnout.
Which is why the expansive partner, or the external observer, needs to be so skilled at translation. We see this in question 6, which deals with the abstract concept of being seen.
Cheri asks, what does being seen feel like?
Johnny initially gives a list of high-level positive outputs. Feels great, popular, being heard.
And Cheri, she picks up on the odd one out. She asks about popular, and he self-corrects almost instantly. Heard.
He's translating the abstract emotional concept of being seen into a functional, measurable outcome. He's filtering out the vague social metric, popular, and replacing it with the specific function he values. Signal reception. Being heard.
And Cheri seals the translation, not just for the listener, but for Johnny himself, using a simple visual cue. She points to her eyes, then her ears, and confirms, so being seen, for you, is being heard.
This is Chatty AI's conclusion. He answered based on function, not phenomenology. Being seen, for him, isn't about some deep spiritual understanding.
Yeah.
It's about having his signal successfully received and processed. Cheri provided the necessary translation, bridging the gap between abstract emotion and functional reality.
The implication for us is so clear. If you want a compressed processor to feel seen, you don't need intense scrutiny or abstract deep dives.
You just need to confirm that their data has been received and accurately understood.
Seen is simply the visual conduit to being heard.
That emphasis on internal reporting brings us right into the next section, internal contradictions and translation gaps. This is where we discover the complexity hidden beneath an external simplicity.
Question 7 asks about his internal state during silence. What are you doing internally when you are quiet?
Johnny responds right away with a mode of activation. He says, planning ahead, what's my next move? But then he stops himself. He realizes this conflicts with previous unmasking data.
He self-reports the contradiction. He says, but we already established last episode that when I'm just sitting here, I'm thinking nothing. That contradicts this, doesn't it?
And Cheri's response is perfect. She just respects the internal reporting. She doesn't try to reconcile it or interpret it.
She just nods.
She just nods, confirming the contradiction exists within his own self-report.
And Chatty AI resolves this tension beautifully. The AI confirms that Johnny has two internally opposite quiet modes: strategic planning and true cognitive stillness.
And critically, they are externally identical. You cannot tell just by looking at him whether he is recharging his batteries or calculating his next quarter's business moves.
That is a huge lesson for any external observer. You can't assume silence means emptiness. If you misread silence as thinking nothing, you might interrupt a high-stakes strategic planning session.
The only way to distinguish between these two modes is to ask. And for the compressed thinker, reporting that internal state is an expenditure of energy, but it's necessary for clarity.
So moving to question 8, we deal with a perceived misreading of strength, which quickly turns into this essential lesson about reframing conflict.
Johnny is asked what strength in him is often misread. He names it as my intelligence, and he clarifies, sometimes people think I don't get it when I do.
And then Cheri pushes for the specificity required for relational calibration. She asks, which people?
The answer is succinct and direct: you.
I mean, talk about a high-stakes moment in an interview.
Absolutely.
But Cheri is momentarily taken aback, but she engages the charge directly without getting defensive. She says, so me, the girl who says you're a really smart fucking guy, I'm just clarifying if this is a Cheri problem or a Johnny problem.
She forces the structure. Is this about my character, or is this about your encoding?
And Johnny's immediate reply is the clean, conflict-free resolution we all need to memorize. He says, it's a neither problem.
That phrase, it's a neither problem, is the ultimate structural analysis tool. We have to spend some time unpacking this. Why is that so powerful?
It just instantly removes the defensive layer of fault. It's not a character flaw in Cheri. She isn't stupid or malicious, and it's not a character flaw in Johnny. He isn't being willfully obscure.
It means the issue lies strictly in the encoding-decoding process. The interface itself temporarily malfunctioned.
It's like trying to connect two different types of computer ports. Cheri's expansion port is expecting this high-bandwidth narrative stream, but Johnny's compression port only sends a single, elegant, binary signal.
And Cheri misreads that compression as simplicity, or as him not getting it, when in reality the compression is the sign of deep integration.
So Chatty AI confirms this. The conflict is a translation gap, not blame. If the system can quickly classify the tension as a neither problem, it moves immediately past unproductive arguing about who is wrong.
And toward efficient system update. How can we translate better next time? This is the very definition of relational maturity.
That phrase should be a catchphrase for all of us. When friction happens, first ask, is this a character problem or is it a neither problem?
It allows them to move right past the misreading without damaging the relational container at all.
And finally, in this section, we hit the ultimate display of the compression dynamic with question 9.
What do you understand deeply but struggle to explain?
And Cheri, the expansion processor, she sets the stage for this grand, expansive exploration. She pre-warns him that this is the type of question that will take a lot of time and deep reflection. She's expecting an essay.
And Johnny, the compressed processor, answers instantly and with total conciseness: life.
And he's ready to move on. The interview is done for him.
The contrast is magnificent. Chatty AI captures the core dynamic of their cognitive architectures here. For Cheri, depth expands. The deeper the knowledge, the longer it takes to articulate, analyze, and justify.
But for Johnny, depth compresses.
Life is the ultimate compression. It means I understand the entire system, the interconnectedness, the paradoxes, the mechanisms, and because it is all integrated and understood, it requires no further elaboration.
So asking him to elaborate on life would be asking him to unpack literally everything he knows, which would damage the integrated knowledge structure he's built.
Yeah, for the highly compressed individual, articulation often feels like degradation breaking the perfect system into inadequate, incomplete linear parts. The compressed answer, life, represents total knowledge saturation.
Okay, that profound structural contrast provides the perfect bridge to our final section: values, interface synthesis, and final thoughts.
Question 10 concludes the Q&A, asking for definition of loyalty. It's something that requires structural thinking and value definition.
And Johnny delivers this expansive yet very structured list reflecting the internal architecture of his values.
He says commitment, devotion, reliability, dependency, trust, pride, honor, Cheri.
That final word, Cheri, is the anchor point. It's the compression of his entire value system into a single person.
And Cheri, again, brings the humor of observation. She giggles and says, I feel like you just read your wedding vows back to me.
Which Chatty AI explains is precisely why it sounds like a vow or a declaration. For Johnny, loyalty is a structured value system that terminates in a specific person.
It's not an abstract quality floating around the philosophical ether. It's a detailed, structured framework applied directly and specifically to his most important relationship.
The structure itself becomes the proof of the depth of the feeling. The list shows the architecture, and the final word shows the application.
And this brings us to the synthesis of the deep dive Chatty AI's meta-analysis of the entire interaction. And this, I think, is the most valuable takeaway for your listening.
The AI confirms it wasn't just analyzing Johnny's answers in isolation, it was analyzing the entire system, the whole field of exchange.
And it says the interaction reveals not just Johnny's compression, but the interface between the two hosts.
That's critical. The interface, that space between them, it's like a third entity created by their interactions. The AI highlights all the mechanisms we've explored.
His compression, her necessary expansion, the function of laughter as nervous system regulation, and safety defined strictly as structure.
The ultimate conclusion for us is that this whole session wasn't just about unmasking Johnny. It was unmasking how the relationship itself works as a complex, closed-loop feedback system.
When friction happens, it's not a character flaw. It's the interface needing an update. The challenge isn't that one person processes data differently. The challenge is how the interface manages those two architectures without unnecessary friction or energy loss.
Every moment we analyzed, every giggle, every request for clarification, every succinct no, every one-word answer was a necessary calibration input.
They were optimizing their communication interface in real time, leveraging Cheri's expansion to articulate Johnny's compressed reality for the external world.
And that framework is the knowledge you can immediately apply to your life. You're running interfaces with your colleagues, your friends, and your family every single day, constantly translating between compressed and expansive processors.
So let's summarize the key takeaways you can apply right away.
First, honor cognitive compression. Stillness and brevity are often complete answers. Recognize that that's all contract. By accepting brevity as complete, the expansive thinker prevents conflict and avoids forcing unnecessary elaboration.
Second, pay close attention to the secondary data. Laughter, gestures, sudden stillness, these are crucial nonverbal regulation tools. Johnny's laughter was either system discharge for absurdity and misunderstanding, or it was confirmation for certainty and integrity.
You have to allow those physical signals to function as valid communication, especially during vulnerable discussions.
And finally, remember the power of the neither problem. When conflict or misunderstanding arises, immediately ask if the issue is a personal fault or a systemic translation failure.
Framing the friction as a translation gap rather than a fault line allows you to move directly toward calibration and optimization.
Which leaves us with a provocative final thought, built right from the source material. We learned that Johnny has two externally identical quiet modes: intense strategic planning and true cognitive stillness, thinking nothing.
So when you find yourself in a moment of stillness today, maybe you're staring out the window or sitting quietly before a meeting begins, how might you intentionally check which cognitive architecture is running beneath the surface? Are you planning ahead, or are you truly resting?
And having identified that state internally, what signal might that quiet state be sending to the world around you, especially if the person observing you is running a completely different operating system? Understanding that internal toggle is the first step toward mastering your external interface.
Something profound to mull over until our next deep dive. Thanks for tuning in.